Kevin Durant just got traded to the Phoenix Suns.
Kevin Durant is headed to Phoenix.
Kevin Durant. You know who I am. Y'all know who I am.
This trade just doesn't reshape the Suns. It reshapes the entire race in the Western Conference.
I think the Phoenix Suns just won the NBA championship.
He's different, man. He's different.
I'm just praying for his happiness and praying for his well-being.
On February 9th, 2023, the Phoenix Suns traded for Kevin Durant, the Slim Reaper himself, just hours after mortgage billionaires Matt and Justin Ishbia were officially unveiled as the team's new majority owners. Kevin Durant was heading to Phoenix. What a move by the new owners, especially Matt, who takes the leading man role in this organization. Matt Ishbia and Suns GM James Jones texted Brooklyn Nets GM Sean Marks late the previous night and cobbled together the trade, scuttling a deal that would have got them then Atlanta Hawks forward John Collins in the process. Basically, Ishbia came in and said, "Fuck John Collins, I want Durant." And he got him. Two-time Finals MVP, two-time champ, 1 MVP, and 4 scoring titles, Kevin frickin' Durant was heading to the Suns. Ishbia, enthralled with his new 2K franchise save, got his man. But the return for the Nets was massive. In exchange for the disgruntled Durant, the Suns sent the Nets Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and 4 unprotected first-round picks. Oh, and a 2028 first-round pick swap for good measure. And the thing is, the Suns were pretty good after this trade. Their team now comprised of KD, Suns star Devin Booker, the aging but effective Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, Cam Payne, and they took the champion Nuggets that year to 6 games. Plus, they were led by head coach Monty Williams, who showed he knew what buttons to press. Not a bad squad. But still, we can't ignore the fact that this is a brand new owner rushing into overpay because he wanted that shiny new toy. And it was an overpay, no matter what anyone says. Yeah, it's fucking KD, but 4 first-round picks, plus a swap, and these young guys? Plus, this young guy netted 5 more first-round picks when he was traded 18 months later. Wild. But still, it's KD. He's an all-time great and has shown that he can be part of a championship core. The real error was yet to come. And then only 4 months later, Ishbia and Suns GM Jones stumbled headfirst into the real noose that strangled the Suns' future. In summer 2023, Phoenix threw a lifeline to an aimless Washington Wizards franchise, trading 4 pick swaps, 5 second-rounders, and CP3 to the District of Columbia to land Bradley Beal, the 3-time All-Star who was the final piece of their new Big Three. At least in Ishbia's eyes. This was the rest of their assets, guys. The Suns didn't have anything left in the bank after this trade. It was the ultimate all-in move play by the Suns and Ishbia, and Ishbia had only been sitting at the table for 120 days. That's like 2 NBA hands in poker terms. This year, in 2024-25, Phoenix and their Big Three, the NBA's most short-term focused and expensive roster, missed the playoffs and embarrassingly didn't even make the play-in tournament. The tournament designed for crap franchises to rationalize their decisions. Looking at you, Bulls. This KD Suns era failed to launch in maybe the most absurd way possible, and set in motion a Phoenix Dark Age with no real exit in sight. Let's get into it. In 2023, when KD arrived in Phoenix, hopes were understandably high as hell. This team had made the finals not even 2 seasons ago, with a fairly young squad featuring Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and DeAndre Ayton in addition to Booker and CP3, their stars. They even set their franchise record for wins in the regular season the season prior, going 64-18. It was a dominant regular season, and this rising team looked like favorites to reach the NBA Finals for a second straight season. Book and company cruised through the first round, and then ran into this guy, Luka Doncic. It's not an understatement to say that this series Game 7 broke the team, or maybe just exposed it. They lost 123-90 at home, but it was even worse than the scoreline suggests because the Mavs sat their starters in the 4th quarter of a Game 7. Luka and Spencer Dinwiddie repeatedly cooked Ayton on switches, and the Mavs couldn't miss a 3. Luka did this to Cam Johnson, and by that point, the game was over. That was the 2nd quarter. The announcers were doing post-game analysis in the 3rd. The Suns' season was on the line, They were the number 1 seed with home court advantage, set the franchise record for wins, and the Mavs just torched them in their own barn. Any scoreline from the third quarter is absurd. This is something you see a contender do to a brazenly tanking team in March, not Game 7 of the second round. The Suns just didn't show up. None of them. I mean, look at these stat lines. Credit to Dallas, though, whose defense suffocated the Suns' offense. Needless to say, it was embarrassing for the Suns. Look at the comment section under this game's highlight video. Carnage. Any thoughts that this team just needed time to develop were vanquished by this unfortunate game. When the 2022-23 season began, they ran into another problem. Turns out their owner was an unprofessional asshole who was investigated and suspended by the NBA, was eventually fined $10 million and forced to sell the team. Not great. In spite of this, the Suns started the season 15-6, trying to put that Game 7 loss behind them. But injuries soon took hold and they stumbled to a 30-26 record by the trade deadline, which brings us back to the KD trade. Sitting at a mediocre record and looking for new life to breathe into the team, new owner Ishbia greenlit and helped negotiate the trade for Durant that sent a war chest of assets to the Brooklyn Nets in return. His first instance of impatience, just a few hours after being officially introduced as Phoenix's new owner. They also traded away Jay Crowder in that deal, which was actually a 4-way deal by the time it was official. Crowder had agreed with the team that he would sit out the season until they could find a suitable move for him, and he eventually found himself in Milwaukee. Energized by acquiring KD, this Suns team put together a 6-4 February, 9-6 March, and 3-2 April to punch their playoff ticket for the third straight season as the 4th seed, with a 45-37 record. And make no mistake, this team was hyped about their new teammate. Chris Paul, the savvy vet who has yet to win his first chip, recognized the significance immediately. In the same article, this line captivated me. While the Nets build towards the future, the Suns have to win now. Love this line, Farbod. Booker loved the trade too, even though injuries limited KD's impact in their playoff hunt. But that didn't dampen his efficiency when he was on the court. In the 8 regular season games he played in a Suns jersey this year, Durant averaged 26 points and helped the team to an 8-0 record when he was on the court. Formidable for sure. In the first round, the Suns dominated the Los Angeles Clippers, beating them in 5 games. Durant scored 31 points in games 4 and 5 to stick a dagger in the Clippers and put up some nice box scores. Booker dominated as well, scoring 45 in Game 3 and 47 to help close out Kawhi and the Clips in Game 5. Then in round 2, the Suns found themselves facing off against another cold-ass white boy. This time it was Serbian legend Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets, who the Suns actually swept on their way to the 2021 finals. This time went a little differently. The Suns put up a fight, notably Booker and KD in the absence of Ayton and Paul, and pushed the Nuggets to 6 games. But the Suns lurched into another disastrous do-or-die game, falling behind 81-51 by halftime. Flashes of Luka and the Mavs were clearly dancing in the Suns' minds. This was another home game, and Suns fans were not pleased. They freaking booed the team as they made their way to the locker room at half, and the second half was essentially an afterthought. That's now 2 years in a row that they had their doors blown off at home in a playoff-clinching loss. And this was with KD in tow. This team was supposed to be different. On the other hand, the Nuggets pushed on and crafted a dominant championship run. They beat the Miami Heat in 5 games in the 2023 finals, and after it was all said and done, KD's Suns were the only team to take more than 1 game off of this year's champs. So, a disappointing playoffs that also had a silver lining. They took the Nuggets to 6 games when no one else managed more than 5. Not bad for a team that only had 8 regular season games to build some chemistry. But it was another blowout, and the nature of their elimination once again left a sour taste in Suns management's mouths. So, it cost Monty Williams his job, just 2 days later. Monty finished his 4-year Phoenix tenure with a 194-115 regular season record and a 27-19 postseason record, with a couple blowout losses sprinkled in there for good measure. This was the guy who led the Suns out of their 10-year playoff drought, their first coach to win NBA Coach of the Year since Mike D'Antoni in 2004-2005. Canned. Well, the Suns probably weren't going to win the championship this year despite being a favorite, Their bench was too short and their defense inadequate, ownership couldn't ignore the way they bowed out of the last 2 playoffs. Brutally. With that, the 2022-23 season was over, and it was a season of change. It was a season that left Suns fans and management wanting more, and they appeared confident that another year of building team chemistry, and an addition or two, could push them over the top. After all, this era was only just beginning. 2023-24 began with cautious optimism for the Suns. On June 6th, the team hired Frank Vogel, the man who led LeBron's Los Angeles Lakers to the 2020 NBA championship in the bubble by building a mean defense. He beat out Doc Rivers and Suns associate coach Kevin Young for the big job. Vogel's track record of building a winning culture around talented players stood out, as did his relationship building with the stars he had under his wing. Then on June 24th, 2023, the Suns swung their second huge trade in the 4 months since the Ishbias took control of the team. This time completing their big 3 by acquiring Bradley Beal from the Wizards. Beal is a 3-time All-Star with a silky smooth jumper who had been toiling for some shit Washington teams for years. Beal is a good player, don't get it twisted, and his smooth shooting could complement any contender, but his contract was already proving to be a bit of a boat anchor even then, especially since his agent negotiated a no-trade clause into it, making Beal the only NBA player aside from LeBron fucking James to own such a clause. Teams don't usually hand these out, for obvious reasons. And Beal put that no-trade clause to work, signaling his interest in forming this new Suns super team. The Suns went to work too, negotiating against themselves and coming to terms on a deal that sent 4 first-round pick swaps and 5 second-round picks to the Wizards, plus Chris Paul. Like I said, everything they had left. According to John Hollinger of The Athletic, the Wiz would have likely accepted a much cheaper deal just to get Beal's deal off their books. But Ishbia and the Suns showed their enthusiasm and delusional decision-making once again, sending pretty much everything that wasn't bolted to the floor of the Footprint Center to bring Beal into the fold. Not ideal. This trade meant that the Suns no longer held their own first-round pick until 2031. But that didn't matter. This team was built to win now.
Bradley Beal, KD, and D Book, 3 of the most prolific scorers in the game today on one team. Look, the Phoenix Suns with this big 3 should be the favorite of coming out of the West and winning next year's title.
Ishbia and co were cooking something up here. Their team now consisted of KD, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, DeAndre Ayton. Oh wait, never mind, he was traded too. On the eve of training camp, Jones traded center Ayton and rookie Tuani Kamara to the Portland Trailblazers in the 3-way deal that sent Damian Lillard to the Bucks and netted the Suns center Yusuf Nurkic and shooting guard Grayson Allen. After watching Ayton's highlights from that 2022 Game 7 against Dallas, I'm honestly surprised this didn't occur sooner. Back to the team. The Suns roster now had Durant, Booker, Beal, Nurkic, Allen, Eric Gordon, who signed that summer, Drew Eubanks, and Bol. Alright, the bench looks a little thin, but the big 3 was going to carry anyway. That is, if they could play together. Injuries delayed the big 3's debut for many a fortnight, which is how the Brits say 2 weeks. They finally got to play together on December 13th, 2023, as the stars finally aligned. It was their home debut, where they lost to none other than the Brooklyn Nets. Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson's return to the desert overshadowed the Big 3's debut by playing nice team basketball. The basketball gods certainly love irony. They struggled outside of that game as well, notably in crunch time performances, and finished 2023 with a record of 17-15. To be fair, this wasn't really due to the Big 3, as they didn't start seeing the court consistently together until early 2024. They had even lost in the quarterfinals of the in-season tournament before we got to see KD, Booker, and Beal share the court. The Suns then turned on the Jets in early 2024 and went 32-18 the rest of the way, clinching the 6th seed after a dramatic April that saw them dance at the play-in tournament. A clutch time to find that extra gear that pushed them to a 49-33 record. KD and Booker led the way, as they both averaged 27.1 points per game this season with great shooting splits. Once he was healthy, Beal played well too, averaging 18.2 points with efficient shooting stats as well, albeit in a smaller role. Their bench was still thin, but midseason acquisitions Royce O'Neal, David Roddy, Thad Young, and an Isaiah Thomas that just didn't have it anymore bolstered the bottom of their lineup. With that, the Suns' eyes turned to the playoffs. As the 6th seed in the West, the Suns matched up against the 3-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves, who they had beaten 2-1 in the regular season series. In fact, a couple of late-season Suns victories against the Timberwolves had actually pushed Minnesota down into the 3 seed, creating this series. Oh! The Timberwolves walloped the Suns this year. Phoenix was unceremoniously swept out of the first round and lost each game by an average of 15 points. It wasn't close. Vogel's Suns defense failed the playoff stress test and wilted under the heat of Anthony Edwards' terrific play. Ant averaged 31, 8, and 6.3. Cat played well too, while Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, Alexander Walker, Mike Conley, and Naz Reid flashed their stellar defense and deep rotation that helped them reach the Western Conference Finals. Phoenix's big three just didn't have an answer. Beal really struggled, shooting 44% from the field and averaged 3.3 turnovers a game. All of them sported some pretty terrible plus-minuses. Even Durant and Booker, who averaged 26.8 and 27.5 points per game respectively, failed to toughen up the team's defense and wasn't dominant enough offensively. Cracks formed down the rest of the roster as well. Nurkic, O'Neal, and Gordon failed to match up with the Timberwolves' depth. Like I said, the series wasn't close. And it was now apparent that this team had taken 2 giant steps backwards over the last couple of years in spite of their shiny new big three. Knowing exactly what the fans wanted to hear after this miserable series, Ishbia attempted to soften the blow with this amazing quote. Yeah, not so sure about that one, dude. Vogel, having overseen this huge step backwards, had his head put on a spike outside Footprint Arena. His time as the Lord of Footprint was over, just 1 year into his 5-year contract. And he still gets paid this, by the way. Being an NBA coach is a sick gig. With that, the Suns moved into their 2024 offseason, where Ishbia was hungry and ready to hit the trade market like the Ottomans hit Constantinople in 1453. But Phoenix couldn't really do shit. The NBA's new collective bargaining agreement equipped the league with some serious teeth to use on teams in the luxury tax starting this summer, especially those in the second tax apron, which is any team that finished the previous season with a payroll of over $190 million. The $209 million Suns, with the league's most expensive roster, fit that description. It's goddamn punitive in the second apron, man. So, being fully restricted by the second apron's limitations, the Suns were hamstrung. New players could only be acquired via their own draft picks or veteran minimum contracts. And don't even think about trying to trade and improve, Matt. Constantinople's gates are closed. Oh, and it turns out you're actually inside the walls. Backed into this corner, the Suns had to pay out their ass just to keep the guys they had. Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal both signed big extensions that came with hefty luxury tax implications. But they were literally Phoenix's only NBA caliber options. Allen's first year of his deal was $15.6 million, but would effectively cost the Suns and Ishbia about $79 million in payroll and tax. Aside from these extensions, they signed some minimum guys and drafted a couple of second rounders to the roster. They also found a new coach, signing Mike Budenholzer, our boy Bud, the 2021 Finals winning head coach and 2-time Coach of the Year, to steer this luxury cruise liner. The intent was clear: win or bust, if it wasn't already obvious. This was a $214 million roster with an additional tax bill of $152 million. Let's see what they can do. Bud also negotiated himself a nice little nest egg in the process. Such a dope job. When the season began, the kids looked like they were alright. Phoenix went 4-1 in October with some nice wins over the Clippers, Lakers, and Mavericks. Then they stumbled. Surprisingly, ran into some injuries, and their depth didn't perform, leading to an 11-16 stretch that had them sitting at 15-17 on New Year's Eve, 2024. In short, they didn't appear to be contenders. The defense was frail, and having 2 twos, or shooting guards, wasn't working. They were just too small with both Booker and Beal on the court. Plus, their bench unit could use some offensive pop since they were roundly losing the minutes when their big three sat. So Coach Bud, who had been mixing and matching lineups all season in a fruitless exercise, went for it. He promoted rookie Ryan Dunn and veteran Mason Plumlee to the starting unit and shifted Beal and fellow starter Nurkic to the bench, making January 6, 2025 the first time in a decade since Beal came off the bench. "I think we just feel like we needed to make a change," said Budenholzer, as he swapped the $50 million man for the rookie making $2.5 million. And fair enough. It was clear that Beal had been struggling, and rumors were swirling that the Suns were trying to offload him for Jimmy Butler, who had been agitating for a move out of Miami for some time. Based on reports, Beal was unwilling to waive his no-trade clause anyway, even though it seemed to get pretty close. Whether Miami would have wanted to acquire Beal and the $111 million owed to him over the next 2 years was another issue. Phoenix even engaged in a pretty silly and unique trade in order to try and force the move through, selling their very last asset, their unprotected 2031 first, to Utah for 3 mediocre first-rounders. It was a weird move, and one that seemed destined to land Jimmy. But Jimmy wound up joining Steph Curry in the Bay Area, which meant Phoenix and Beal were riding the season out. So Phoenix sent one of those first-rounders out to offload Nurkic, who had played himself out of the lineup. No worries though, because Bud's decision to bump Beal to the bench worked wonders, at least for a little while. The team went 10-5 in January, and I mean it was mostly beating up against teams like Washington, Utah, and Brooklyn, but it was the turnaround they needed. Phoenix took a breath. But any hopes that were raised from this brief run evaporated into the desert air pretty fast. The Suns went 3-10 in February, 7-8 in March, and an embarrassing 1-6 in April as they completely crashed out of the playoffs and the play-in tournament. An 8-game losing streak at the end of the season was the opposite of clutch, and they ended the season with a 36-46 record. Again, most expensive roster, guys. When it was all said and done, Budenholzer used 33 different starting lineups as he tried in vain to piece together a competent team. The top-heavy roster couldn't find any kind of consistency, and plummeted to depths that would have been hard to imagine just 3 years ago when they notched 64 wins. Bud was fired after just 1 year for this failure of a season, and Jones was demoted shortly after, ending his almost 7-year run as the Suns' general manager. And that's it for the Suns' KD era, ending in miserable fashion. We're now at the part of this wreck where everybody gets to slowly drive past it and check it out, while feeling relief it's not their team in this car accident. This isn't just a typical hangover for a team that's nearing the end of their championship window. In Phoenix, the birds are chirping, and they're lying in bed racked with anxiety as the sun pours through their window. This franchise has traded every single one of their own first-round picks through 2031, and they're bad now. Gunning for short-term gains at the expense of your future can work out. The Cavaliers trading a haul for Donovan Mitchell proves this. But this is the other side of the coin. Doesn't always work out. And this is the point where Phoenix is left holding an empty bag, and will likely suffer for years to come. Like I said, Ishbia is actually inside the walls of Constantinople. He's not an invading conqueror. So now the Suns are just sitting there, like the great city in the decades leading up to the Ottoman sacking of it, bloated yet also hollowed out, waiting for the end. The Ottomans will soon rush in, plundering what Suns fans once held dear: the players. It's not hyperbole to say that this is the most dire situation I can remember an NBA team being in. Sorry, Suns fans. The only questions that remain now are, where will KD go? Will he even be traded as soon as we think? Will Devin Booker go too? Can the Suns package them together to get a couple of their own draft picks back so they can pursue a tank job? It's a messy situation and there's no clear solution. And will any team rise from the smoking ashes of Phoenix's self-inflicted death to form a new super team? Much like the Boston Celtics did with the Brooklyn Nets picks almost a decade ago. There are plenty of pleased teams out there holding on to the Suns' first rounders, hoping that the stars will align for them. We'll see, but this has been one hell of a failure to launch. Thank you to everybody who made it to the end with me. I have a couple of other failure to launch videos if you're interested. And you can support me on my Patreon channel to get access to ad-free videos, get early access to content, and a bunch of other cool shit. Thanks guys, I appreciate y'all's support. Peace for now.